Max Johnson pushed open the heavy glass doors of the luxury car dealership, his shoes squelching against the tiled floor from the rain that had soaked him outside. The sky had opened up just as he stepped off the bus, drenching his modest attire. He wore a simple, worn jacket, its color faded from years of use, and a pair of plain trousers. Water dripped from the brim of his hat, and his hands were cold as he tucked them into his pockets. Inside the dealership, the atmosphere was worlds apart from the storm raging outside. It was pristine, with gleaming floors that reflected the showroom's elegant lighting. Rows of luxury cars, polished to perfection, stood as gleaming symbols of wealth and status. Max's gaze wandered over the vehicles, admiring their sleek lines, the shimmer of their paint under the spotlights, and the aura of power they seemed to exude. A bright red convertible with its top down caught his eye, and he couldn't help but smile at the thought of sitting behind the wheel of such a beautiful machine. But as Max took his first few steps inside, it didn't take long for him to feel the cold stares from the staff. He could sense the eyes of the salesmen on him, disdainful, judgmental, and dismissive. Two of them, standing by the coffee station, exchanged smirks as they watched him wander around the showroom. One of them, a tall man with slicked-back hair and a designer watch, leaned in toward his colleague and whispered something that made both of them chuckle quietly. Max, unaware of their specific words but fully attuned to the atmosphere, continued to examine the cars. He had been dreaming of this moment for years, saving every penny, cutting back on unnecessary expenses, and working extra hours at his job. This dealership, known for its high-end vehicles, was a place he had walked past countless times, admiring from afar. Now, despite his modest appearance, he was ready to make a purchase. However, the reception he was receiving made it clear that appearances mattered far more to the staff than he had anticipated. At a sleek marble desk near the entrance sat Anna, a young receptionist with kind eyes and a welcoming smile. She noticed Max the moment he stepped inside. While her colleagues' gazes were filled with scorn, hers was filled with curiosity and empathy. She had seen this scenario play out many times. Customers coming in dressed in expensive suits were treated like royalty, while those who didn't fit the image of wealth were often ignored or subtly ridiculed. Something about Max's demeanor, his quiet confidence beneath the rain-soaked clothes, made her feel uncomfortable with how her coworkers were acting. From across the showroom, Juan, one of the arrogant salesmen, nudged his colleague Miguel with a smirk. "Look at this guy," he muttered, his voice dripping with condescension. "Think he's in the wrong place?" Miguel chuckled, shaking his head. "He's probably just here to get out of the rain. No way he's serious about buying anything here." The two shared a laugh, loud enough for Max to hear. He glanced in their direction, meeting their eyes for a brief moment. The laughter stopped, but the smirks remained. Max didn't react. He wasn't here for them. He made his way toward the red convertible that had caught his eye. The car was stunning. Its deep crimson paint gleamed under the showroom lights, and its leather interior looked as soft as butter. He ran his hand lightly along the side of the car, feeling the smooth, cold surface beneath his fingertips. It was then that Juan, still grinning, decided to step forward. He approached Max with the air of someone who was doing a favor rather than performing his job. "Nice car, huh?" Juan said, his tone casual, but with an undercurrent of superiority. "This one's not cheap, though. Probably a bit out of reach for most people." Max looked up, meeting Juan's gaze. His expression remained neutral, but there was a quiet determination in his eyes. "I'm interested," Max said simply. "Can you tell me more about it?" Juan raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised by the response. He hadn't expected Max to express genuine interest. Still, he couldn't resist the opportunity to condescend further. "Well, this is a V8 twin-turbo," he began, his tone patronizing, as if he assumed Max wouldn't understand the terminology. "Top-of-the-line luxury, not something you'd typically see people financing. Buyers for this kind of car usually just pay up front." Max listened patiently, his hands clasped behind his back as Juan rambled on about the car's features. When Juan finished, Max asked, "What are the financing options?" Juan's expression changed slightly. He had been hoping Max wouldn't go that far. "Financing? For this?" He chuckled, glancing over his shoulder at Miguel, who had been watching from the sidelines. "I mean, we do offer financing, but honestly, a car like this, most people wouldn't bother. It's for serious buyers. Max's face remained calm, though he could feel the sting of the comment. He knew exactly what Juan was implying, that he wasn't a serious buyer, that he didn't belong in this dealership, let alone behind the wheel of a luxury car like this. From her desk, Anna watched the exchange unfold, her fingers nervously tapping against the keyboard. She felt a pang of embarrassment on Max's behalf, though she could see that he was handling the situation with quiet dignity. She had seen men like Juan and Miguel act this way before, assuming that someone's worth could be measured by the clothes they wore or the car they drove. It made her uncomfortable, but as a receptionist, she didn't have the authority to intervene. Juan continued, his smile now more of a sneer. I mean, if you're really serious about it, I could run some numbers. But I have to say, this car's a bit more than most people can handle. Max met his gaze, unwavering. I'd like to know the numbers, he said, his voice calm but firm. Juan sighed, clearly growing impatient. Fine, I'll see what I can do. He turned on his heel, muttering something under his breath as he made his way to the office. As he passed Miguel, the two exchanged knowing glances and quiet laughter, their voices just loud enough to carry a hint of their mockery. Max stood by the car, his hands still tucked into his pockets. The laughter didn't bother him. He had come here for a reason, and he wasn't about to let their arrogance deter him. He had faced much worse in his life than the dismissive attitudes of two car salesmen. Anna, unable to remain silent any longer, glanced up from her desk. Can I get you something to drink while you wait? She asked, her voice soft but genuine. Max turned and smiled at her, the first warm expression he'd had since walking into the dealership. That would be nice, he replied. Thank you. Anna quickly stood and fetched a cup of coffee, offering it to Max with a shy smile. I'm sorry about the wait, she said awkwardly, not wanting to openly criticize her co-workers, but feeling the need to acknowledge the uncomfortable situation. Max took the coffee, his smile never fading. No need to apologize, he said kindly. I appreciate your kindness. As Max stood by the red convertible, sipping his coffee and waiting for Juan to return, he knew that this was only the beginning of his journey in this dealership. He could sense the storm brewing, not just outside where the rain continued to pour, but inside the hearts of those who had judged him so quickly. Little did they know that the man they were so eager to dismiss had far more power than they could ever imagine. A few days passed and the weather had cleared. The rain that had soaked Max during his first visit was replaced by a bright, crisp morning, with sunlight spilling over the buildings and casting long shadows along the sidewalk. Despite the clear skies, Max's modest attire remained unchanged. He wore the same worn jacket, the same faded trousers, and the same unassuming demeanor. He could have easily dressed differently, but there was no point. He wasn't trying to impress anyone, nor was he seeking validation through his appearance. Max had thought a lot about his previous visit to the dealership. The snide remarks, the dismissive behavior, the subtle but palpable disdain. It had left an impression on him, not because he was unused to such treatment, but because it had confirmed something deeper about the nature of people who valued surface over substance. He had decided that his return would be different, not just for him, but for those who had written him off so quickly. As Max approached the dealership once again, his stride was calm, measured, and deliberate. The polished glass windows reflected the glimmering luxury cars inside, their pristine exteriors catching the sunlight just as they had before. But this time, Max wasn't just here to admire or inquire about financing options. He had a purpose, and it involved more than simply purchasing a car. He walked through the doors, greeted by the familiar scent of leather and the sterile, almost clinical atmosphere of the high-end showroom. Immediately, the same two salesmen, Juan and Miguel, noticed him. Miguel was the first to nudge Juan, raising an eyebrow and smirking as Max made his way inside. They exchanged quick, knowing glances, their shared arrogance once again surfacing. "Look who's back," Miguel muttered under his breath, his voice dripping with condescension. Juan chuckled, shaking his head. "Glutton for punishment, huh? Guess he didn't get the message the first time." Max's eyes scanned the room. He didn't need to look at them directly to know what they were saying, but their words rolled off him like water. He had already made up his mind that nothing they did or said could affect the course of what was about to happen. His eyes landed on the reception desk where Anna sat, typing something on her computer. She hadn't noticed him yet, her attention focused on her work. Max calmly walked over to the desk, his footsteps echoing slightly in the large open showroom. As he approached, Anna looked up, and for a brief moment, there was a flicker of surprise in her eyes. She remembered him immediately, his polite demeanor, the quiet patience he had shown despite the way he had been treated. A smile crept across her face, not forced or superficial, but genuine. "Good morning, Mr. Johnson," she said softly, using the name he had given her during his last visit. "It's nice to see you again." Max nodded in acknowledgement, returning her smile with one of his own. "Good morning, Anna. It's good to be back." Anna hesitated for a moment, glancing briefly toward Juan and Miguel, who were still watching from afar. She seemed conflicted, knowing how things had gone the last time he was here, and unsure of what to say next. "Are you here to look at the cars again?" she asked, her tone careful but warm. Max shook his head gently. "Not this time. I'd actually like to speak to Mr. Garcia, if he's available." This request seemed to catch Anna off guard. It was unusual for someone to ask directly for the manager unless there had been an issue, and though she suspected Max had experienced some form of mistreatment, she hadn't anticipated him making a formal complaint. She hesitated, glancing down at her computer screen. "Mr. Garcia is, very busy today," she said, trying to soften the rejection. "But I can ask him if he's available. It might be a bit of a wait." Max's expression didn't change. He nodded calmly. "I don't mind waiting." At this, Juan sauntered over, his tall frame casting a shadow over the desk as he approached Max and Anna. His smirk was as evident as ever, and he seemed to relish the opportunity to assert his dominance once again. "Looking for Mr. Garcia, huh?" Juan said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "The big boss is a busy man. Not sure he's got time for, well, everyone." Max turned to face Juan, his calm demeanor never wavering. "That's all right. I can wait as long as I need to." Juan gave a dramatic sigh, shaking his head as though Max's persistence was a waste of time. "Suit yourself," he muttered, turning away, his arrogance palpable. Before he walked off, he glanced back at Anna and nodded toward the coffee station. "Hey, Anna, why don't you get him some coffee while he waits?" Anna gave Juan a tight-lipped smile, knowing full well that he was trying to reinforce the power dynamic, trying to put Max in his place once more. Nevertheless, she turned to Max, her kindness still evident in her eyes. "Would you like some coffee?" she asked. Max smiled appreciatively. "That would be nice. Thank you, Anna." As Anna prepared the coffee, Max took a seat in one of the waiting area chairs. He wasn't bothered by Juan's attempts to demean him. In fact, he found them almost amusing. He had encountered far worse in his life. People who thought their wealth or status gave them the right to look down on others. People who never imagined that someone like him could be more than what they saw on the surface. Minutes passed and the dealership's usual hum of activity continued around him. Customers came and went, most of them dressed in expensive suits or carrying designer handbags. They were attended to with enthusiasm, treated as though their presence alone elevated the status of the showroom. Max remained seated, sipping his coffee and observing the interactions with quiet interest. Anna, in between helping other customers, glanced over at Max every now and then. There was something about him that intrigued her, something that went beyond his modest appearance. He didn't fit the mold of the dealership's usual clientele, but there was a quiet confidence about him that suggested he had more depth than anyone gave him credit for. Eventually, after what felt like an eternity to Juan and Miguel, but only a short time to Max, Juan grudgingly approached. "All right, looks like Mr. Garcia has a few minutes," he said, clearly displeased with having to deliver this message. "I'll take you to his office." Max stood up, handing his empty coffee cup back to Anna with a smile. "Thank you for the coffee," he said. Anna nodded, returning his smile with one of her own. Juan led the way through the dealership, weaving between the gleaming cars, past the sales desks, and toward a large office at the back of the showroom. The door to Mr. Garcia's office was a heavy wooden panel with an etched glass window, giving it an air of authority. Juan knocked twice and then opened the door without waiting for a response, clearly expecting to be welcomed without question. Inside, Mr. Garcia sat behind a large mahogany desk, his well-tailored suit fitting perfectly as he adjusted his glasses and looked up from a stack of papers. He was an older man, his graying hair neatly combed back, and his expression one of mild annoyance at the interruption. "Mr. Garcia, this is, Max Johnson," Juan said, gesturing toward Max with a dismissive wave of his hand. "He's been asking to speak with you." Garcia's eyes moved from Juan to Max, and for a moment there was a flicker of recognition, though not of Max himself, but of the type of person he assumed Max to be. His gaze lingered on the worn jacket, the scuffed shoes, the ordinary appearance. Garcia's expression became more neutral, though there was still a hint of disinterest. "What can I do for you, Mr. Johnson?" Garcia asked, his tone polite but distant. Max stepped forward, his calm demeanor never faltering. "Thank you for taking the time to meet with me," he began. "I wanted to speak with you about an experience I had here during my previous visit. I'm considering purchasing a car from your dealership, but I was dissatisfied with the way I was treated by some of your staff." Garcia's expression didn't change, but there was a slight tightening around his eyes as if he was bracing himself for a typical customer complaint about service. "I'm sorry to hear that," Garcia said, his tone measured. "We aim to provide excellent service to all our customers. If you could give me more details, I'd be happy to address the issue." Max nodded, recounting his previous encounter with Juan and Miguel, though he did so without bitterness or anger. He explained how they had assumed he wasn't a serious buyer based on his appearance, how they had brushed off his inquiries and spoken to him with condescension. He spoke plainly, but his words carried weight. There was no need for exaggeration or embellishment. The truth was enough. Garcia listened, his expression unreadable. When Max finished, there was a brief silence in the room, broken only by the soft hum of the air conditioning. Juan, standing by the door, looked uncomfortable, shifting his weight from foot to foot as he glanced between Max and Garcia. Finally, Garcia spoke, his voice low and contemplative. "I appreciate you bringing this to my attention, Mr. Johnson. It's certainly not the kind of experience we want our customers to have. I'll be speaking with my staff about this matter." Max nodded once, his face calm and composed. "Thank you for your time, Mr. Garcia. I hope that my next visit will be a more positive one." With that, Max turned and left the office, his steps steady and sure. He had planted the seed of change, but he knew that the real test would come later. The sun was shining brightly the next time Max Johnson made his way back to the dealership. It had been several weeks since his conversation with Mr. Garcia, and although his attire was still modest, there was a noticeable difference in his presence. He walked with a purpose, his steps confident but not hurried, as if he knew that this visit would mark the culmination of everything that had been set in motion. This time, Max wasn't alone. Walking beside him was Ricardo, a tall, impeccably dressed man with a sleek, tailored suit that caught the attention of anyone nearby. Ricardo's polished leather shoes clicked against the pavement as they approached the dealership, his air of elegance and authority commanding immediate respect. He carried himself like someone used to making big decisions, someone who others were eager to impress. Max, by contrast, remained understated, his worn jacket and scuffed shoes a stark contrast to Ricardo's flawless appearance. Yet there was an unspoken connection between them, an understanding that today's events would not unfold as anyone in the dealership expected. Inside the dealership, the atmosphere was much the same as before. Polished cars glistened under the showroom lights, salesmen milled about, ready to pounce on potential buyers, and the scent of fresh leather and high-end cologne filled the air. But this time, the reception was different. As soon as Max and Ricardo entered, the eyes of every staff member seemed to shift in their direction. Juan and Miguel were stationed near the front, as usual, their smug expressions barely concealed. But the moment they saw Ricardo, the two salesmen straightened up, their previous arrogance replaced by what could only be described as professional eagerness. Miguel nudged Juan, and the two exchanged a look. Ricardo, with his perfectly pressed suit and confident stride, was exactly the kind of customer they loved to see. A man who appeared to have deep pockets and impeccable taste. Miguel, sensing an opportunity, stepped forward first. "Good afternoon, gentlemen," he said, his voice dripping with charm and enthusiasm. His eyes were fixed on Ricardo, ignoring Max completely, as though he were an insignificant shadow. "What can we help you with today? Looking for something special?" Ricardo glanced around the showroom, his expression neutral, as if assessing the entire place before making a decision. His presence, calm and deliberate, made everyone around him stand a little straighter, their professionalism heightened by his mere appearance. Juan quickly followed suit, walking up beside Miguel, eager to latch on to this potential sale. "We've got some fantastic models on the floor today," Juan added, his voice brimming with false warmth. "Anything you're interested in? We'd be happy to give you a full tour of our inventory." Max watched this interaction unfold with quiet amusement. He wasn't surprised in the least that the two salesmen had completely disregarded him in favor of Ricardo. They were making all the assumptions that he had come to expect. Ricardo looked the part of a wealthy, powerful man, and in their eyes, that made him the real customer. Ricardo, however, wasn't swayed by their eager sales pitches. He looked over at Max, raising an eyebrow slightly, as if waiting for his cue. Max gave him a small nod, and with that subtle gesture, Ricardo turned back to the salesman. "We're here to see Mr. Garcia," Ricardo said, his voice steady and authoritative. Miguel blinked, caught off guard for a moment by the request. He had been gearing up to make a grand sales pitch, ready to dazzle Ricardo with the latest models and features. But the mention of Mr. Garcia's name threw him off his game. Still, he recovered quickly, his smile never wavering. "Of course," Miguel said, stepping aside and motioning toward the back office. "Let me see if Mr. Garcia is available. He's usually quite busy, but for you, I'm sure he'll make some time." Miguel turned on his heel, heading toward Mr. Garcia's office with a quickened pace, eager to ensure that this distinguished-looking customer received the attention he clearly deserved. Juan remained behind, still trying to engage Ricardo, offering him comments about the cars on display, though it was clear that his efforts were falling flat. Max stood quietly, observing everything with a calm detachment. His hands were in his pockets, and he gave no indication that he was in any way perturbed by Juan and Miguel's continued ignorance of him. This was the final act in a performance that had been unfolding since his first visit, and he knew that soon enough everything would come to light. A few minutes later, Miguel returned, a look of success on his face. "Mr. Garcia is ready to meet with you," he said, once again directing his words exclusively toward Ricardo. "If you'd like to follow me, I'll take you to his office." Max and Ricardo followed Miguel through the showroom, weaving past the rows of cars that gleamed under the lights. Juan stayed behind, clearly disappointed that he wouldn't get a chance to make his pitch, but confident that Miguel would close whatever deal was in the works. As they approached Mr. Garcia's office, Miguel opened the door and gestured for Ricardo to enter. Mr. Garcia was seated behind his large mahogany desk, just as he had been during Max's previous visit, his suit as impeccable as always. He looked up from his paperwork and, upon seeing Ricardo, rose from his seat with a welcoming smile. "Ah, Mr. Garcia," Miguel began, his voice filled with pride. "This is Mr. Ricardo. He's here to speak with you today." Garcia extended his hand toward Ricardo, offering a firm handshake. "Welcome, Mr. Ricardo," Garcia said warmly. "Please have a seat. It's always a pleasure to meet someone with an eye for quality." Ricardo accepted the handshake, but before sitting down, he glanced toward Max, who had remained standing by the door, observing the scene with quiet patience. Garcia's eyes followed Ricardo's gaze, and for the first time, he seemed to truly notice Max. There was a momentary flicker of recognition in his eyes, a brief flash of memory from their previous meeting, but it was clear that he hadn't yet connected the dots. "Ah, Mr. Johnson," Garcia said, his tone polite but somewhat distant. "I wasn't expecting you today." Max smiled slightly, stepping forward into the office. "I thought it was time for another visit," he said, his voice calm and composed, "and I brought a friend." There was a subtle shift in the air as Max spoke, a change in the dynamic that Garcia couldn't quite place. He glanced between Max and Ricardo, confusion beginning to creep into his expression. Something about this interaction wasn't adding up. "I see," Garcia said slowly, sitting back down behind his desk. He gestured for Max and Ricardo to take a seat in the chairs opposite him. "So, what can I do for you gentlemen today?" Ricardo remained silent for the moment, letting Max take the lead. Max leaned forward slightly in his chair, his gaze steady as he addressed Garcia. "I came here a few weeks ago," Max began, his tone even but firm. I came to inquire about purchasing a car. During that visit, I was treated with, let's just say, less than the respect that any customer should expect. Garcia's eyes narrowed slightly, and the memory of their previous conversation seemed to resurface. He shifted in his seat, his expression becoming more guarded. I remember our conversation, he said. I apologize if the service you received wasn't up to our usual standards. Max nodded, acknowledging the apology but not letting it divert him from his purpose. I appreciate the apology, he said, but there's something else you should know. At this, Max leaned back slightly in his chair, his hands resting calmly in his lap. You see, I'm not just any customer. I'm actually the owner of the factory that manufactures the cars you sell here at this dealership. The room fell into a sudden, heavy silence. Garcia's eyes widened, and for the first time, genuine shock registered on his face. He blinked as if trying to process the information he had just been given. Miguel, who had been standing by the door, looked utterly dumbfounded, his mouth slightly open in disbelief. Max let the silence linger for a few moments before continuing. I wanted to see how customers were treated at one of the dealerships that sell my cars. What I experienced was eye-opening. Garcia's face had gone pale and he swallowed hard, his professional demeanor beginning to crack under the weight of this revelation. Mr. Johnson, I had no idea. That's the point, Max said quietly. You and your staff made assumptions based on my appearance. You decided who was worthy of your attention and respect and who wasn't. Ricardo, who had remained silent throughout the exchange, finally spoke up. It's a common problem in businesses like this, he said, his voice smooth and measured. Judging customers by their appearance can lead to unfortunate consequences. Garcia, clearly panicking now, tried to regain control of the situation. Mr. Johnson, I assure you that this is not representative of our usual service. I'll speak to my staff immediately. Max raised a hand, stopping him mid-sentence. It's already been taken care of. I've had conversations with the higher-ups at the company, and changes are being made across all dealerships that sell our cars. Today is just the beginning. Garcia sank back into his chair, clearly defeated. He glanced over at Miguel, who stood frozen by the door, his earlier arrogance replaced with fear. Juan, who had remained in the showroom, had no idea what was unfolding in the office, but it wouldn't be long before he found out. I think it's time we address the behavior of certain employees, Max continued, his voice still calm, but carrying a weight that left no room for argument. Juan and Miguel, specifically. Garcia nodded hastily, his voice faltering. Of course, I'll see to it that they're dealt with. Max's expression remained unreadable as he stood up, followed by Ricardo. Thank you for your time, Mr. Garcia, he said simply. I'll be keeping an eye on how things progress here. With that, Max and Ricardo left the office, leaving Garcia and Miguel in stunned silence. As they walked through the showroom, past the gleaming cars and the oblivious Juan, Max felt a sense of closure. The truth had been revealed, and now it was time for real change to begin. The revelation of Max Johnson's true identity sent shockwaves through the dealership. In the days following his visit with Ricardo, there was a palpable tension among the staff. Whispers circulated through the showroom and offices, with everyone speculating on what would happen next. The quiet man whom many had underestimated was now at the center of a storm, and the consequences of the salesman's arrogance were beginning to unfold. It wasn't long before Mr. Garcia made his move. One morning before the dealership opened to the public, he called an all-staff meeting. The usually confident salesmen, including Juan and Miguel, stood around nervously, casting uncertain glances at one another. They had heard rumors about the true identity of the man they had brushed off and mocked, and now there was an unmistakable sense that something was about to change. Anna stood near the back of the group, feeling the weight of the moment. She had known all along that there was more to Max than what met the eye, and now her instincts had been proven right. She also knew that this meeting wasn't just about reprimanding those who had mistreated him. It was about the dealership's future. Mr. Garcia walked into the room, his face serious, carrying a folder of documents under his arm. The usually warm and professional demeanor he presented to customers was replaced by a grim expression, the result of days spent reckoning with the fallout of Max's visit. He cleared his throat and began to speak, his voice steady but with a distinct note of urgency. Ladies and gentlemen, as many of you know, We had a visitor here recently, someone who has a significant connection to our business. His visit has prompted us to reevaluate how we treat our customers and, more importantly, how we conduct ourselves as a team. The staff listened intently, some nodding, while others, particularly Juan and Miguel, stood rigid, their eyes fixed straight ahead, avoiding eye contact with their manager. They knew what was coming, and there was no way to escape it. Mr. Garcia continued, flipping open the folder in his hands. It has come to my attention that certain behaviors and attitudes exhibited in this dealership do not align with the values we claim to uphold. We are supposed to be an establishment that welcomes everyone, that treats every potential customer with respect, regardless of their appearance or perceived financial status. His eyes swept across the room, pausing briefly on Juan and Miguel. Unfortunately, some of you have failed in this regard. I have no choice but to take action. The silence that followed his statement was deafening. Miguel shifted uncomfortably on his feet, and Juan's face flushed with a mix of anger and fear. Garcia's gaze hardened as he looked directly at them. Juan, Miguel, your actions toward Mr. Johnson, the owner of the very company that supplies our vehicles, were not only disrespectful but completely unacceptable. You treated a customer with disdain, you judged him based on his appearance, and you failed to perform your duties with the professionalism that this dealership demands. Both men stood frozen, the weight of Garcia's words pressing down on them. Juan, still holding on to a shred of his usual arrogance, opened his mouth to speak, but Garcia cut him off before he could utter a word. I don't want to hear any excuses. Your behavior reflects poorly on this entire dealership, and it jeopardizes our relationships with suppliers, customers, and our own reputation. Effective immediately, you are both terminated from your positions here. The words hit the room like a thunderclap. Everyone knew this was coming, but the finality of it left a stunned silence in its wake. Juan's face turned bright red, and Miguel's mouth fell open in disbelief, but neither could argue. They had sealed their own fate the moment they had decided to mock and belittle Max. Garcia didn't wait for them to respond. Please gather your things and leave the premises. HR will be in touch with the necessary paperwork. The two men, now pale with shock, slowly turned and left the room, their heads down. As they disappeared through the door, the rest of the staff remained in stunned silence, processing what had just occurred. It was a moment that would be remembered in the dealership's history, a turning point, a warning, and a lesson all rolled into one. Once Juan and Miguel were gone, Mr. Garcia sighed, rubbing his temples as though the weight of the decision had drained him. But there was more to be done. He looked up again at the remaining staff, his tone softening slightly but still firm. I know that change can be uncomfortable, but this is necessary. We need to do better, much better. Going forward, there will be mandatory training sessions on customer service, professionalism, and, most importantly, respect. These changes aren't optional. They are essential for our survival and growth as a business. The staff nodded in agreement, some more eagerly than others. They could all feel the shift in the atmosphere. This wasn't just a temporary change. It was the beginning of something new. Mr. Garcia wasn't finished, though. I also want to acknowledge that while some of our staff failed to treat Mr. Johnson with the respect he deserved, there were those who did. His eyes found Anna, standing quietly near the back of the group, her hands clasped in front of her. Anna, please step forward. Anna's heart skipped a beat as she felt every pair of eyes turn toward her. She had not expected to be singled out, and her natural shyness made her want to shrink back into the shadows. But there was also a sense of pride welling up inside her as she stepped forward, her cheeks flushing slightly. Mr. Garcia smiled at her, a genuine warmth in his expression. Anna, I want to commend you for the way you treated Mr. Johnson from the moment he walked into this dealership. You showed him the respect, kindness, and professionalism that we should all strive for. Your actions did not go unnoticed, and I believe they set an example for the rest of us. Anna felt her face grow warmer under the attention, but she smiled and nodded, grateful for the acknowledgement. That being said, Garcia continued, I'd like to offer you a promotion. Effective immediately, you'll be taking on a leadership role in our customer relations department. You've demonstrated the qualities we need to build a stronger, more respectful environment here, and I have full confidence that you'll thrive in this position." There was a round of applause from the staff, many of whom were genuinely happy for Anna. She had always been kind, quietly doing her job without seeking attention or praise, and now her moment had finally arrived. Anna's eyes glistened slightly with emotion as she nodded her thanks, still processing the fact that she had just been promoted. Mr. Garcia gave her a warm smile and then addressed the group once more. "The changes we're making aren't just about avoiding mistakes. They're about transforming how we operate, about creating a dealership that people can trust and feel comfortable in. And it starts today." The meeting ended shortly after that, with the staff dispersing to their respective roles. As they returned to their desks, their tasks, and their sales pitches, there was a new energy in the air, a mix of apprehension and hope. The firings of Juan and Miguel served as a stark reminder that things would no longer be business as usual. But Anna's promotion signaled a new beginning, a chance for everyone to rise to the occasion and be part of something better. In the days that followed, the dealership began to change. True to his word, Mr. Garcia implemented the mandatory training sessions, bringing in professionals to teach the staff about empathy, customer relations, and the importance of treating everyone with dignity. These sessions were more than just lectures. They were immersive experiences designed to challenge the biases and assumptions that many of the staff had carried for years. Anna, now in her leadership role, was instrumental in these changes. Her quiet strength and understanding of customer needs became a guiding force for the team. She worked closely with Mr. Garcia, not just in organizing the training, but in fostering a new culture of respect. She began to introduce new policies that emphasized personalized customer service, ensuring that each person who walked through the doors felt valued and heard. Her influence was felt almost immediately. Customers began to notice the difference. There was a warmth in the air, a sense that they weren't just another sale, but someone worthy of genuine attention. The staff, too, began to change. Those who had once been quick to judge started listening more, engaging with people from all walks of life without preconceived notions. It wasn't easy, of course. There were still moments of resistance, especially from those who had grown comfortable in the old ways of doing things. But Anna's presence, along with Mr. Garcia's unwavering commitment to the transformation, kept the momentum going. And through it all, Max Johnson remained a silent figure in the background. He didn't need to make any more grand appearances. His actions had already set the wheels of change in motion, and now he watched as the dealership began to evolve into something far better than it had been before. The dealership's transformation wasn't just about saving face after a public embarrassment. It was about becoming a place that truly lived up to the values it professed. A place where anyone, regardless of their background, could walk in and be treated with the respect and dignity they deserved. Max's quiet confrontation had started something profound, and now under Anna's leadership, the seeds of change were beginning to bloom. The culture shift had begun, and there was no going back. The dealership gleamed under the warm afternoon sun as Max Johnson approached its familiar entrance. The glass doors shone like polished mirrors, reflecting the red convertible that now awaited him in the showroom. It had been some time since his last visit, and much had changed within the walls of this once arrogant and dismissive establishment. As he walked through the front doors, the atmosphere was markedly different from his earlier visits. Instead of the cold, judgmental stares that had greeted him before, the staff now treated every customer who entered the dealership with genuine warmth and respect. Conversations with clients were no longer rushed or tinged with hidden disdain. People were being treated as individuals, not just as walking wallets. Max glanced around the room, quietly taking in the transformation. The showroom was filled with potential buyers, all receiving the attention they deserved. Salesmen moved from customer to customer, answering questions, offering information, and making sure that everyone felt welcome. It was a far cry from the dealership he had first walked into, where appearance dictated everything. Now the employees seemed genuinely invested in providing top-tier service, no matter who walked through the door. As Max moved toward the red convertible he had admired on his first visit, he noticed Anna standing by the reception desk, engaged in conversation with a group of younger staff members. She was giving them advice, her voice calm and confident, her demeanor that of a leader who had grown into a role. There was a distinct shift in her presence. The shy receptionist who had once stood on the sidelines had blossomed into a key figure within the dealership. Anna caught sight of Max out of the corner of her eye and immediately excused herself from the conversation. Her face lit up with a smile as she walked toward him. She had been waiting for this moment, the day Max would return to pick up the car he had always wanted. But this time, she knew he wasn't just another customer. He was the man who had set everything in motion, the catalyst for the transformation that had taken place in their workplace. "Mr. Johnson," Anna said warmly as she approached him, "it's so good to see you again." Max returned her smile, his eyes filled with quiet appreciation. "It's good to see you too, Anna. And please call me Max." Anna nodded, her smile widening. "Of course, Max." She motioned toward the gleaming red convertible in the middle of the showroom. "Your car is ready for you. We've made sure everything is perfect." Max's gaze lingered on the car for a moment before returning to Anna. "It's beautiful," he said softly. "But the car isn't the only reason I'm here today." Anna looked at him, her curiosity piqued. "Oh?" Max's expression softened. "I wanted to see how things were going, how the changes have taken hold. And from what I can tell, it looks like you've made an incredible difference here." Anna glanced around the room, taking in the scene for herself. "It hasn't been easy," she admitted, her voice thoughtful, "but we've worked hard to make sure that what happened to you never happens to anyone else. Mr. Garcia has been very supportive, and the staff, well, they've come a long way." Max nodded. "I can see that. You should be proud." A slight blush crept into Anna's cheeks, but her smile remained. "Thank you. I couldn't have done it without you, though. You started all of this." Max chuckled softly. "I just gave things a little push. You're the one who made it happen." Before the conversation could continue, Mr. Garcia appeared from his office, walking toward them with a broad, welcoming smile. He had been waiting for Max's return as well, eager to show him the progress that had been made under Anna's guidance. "Max, it's wonderful to see you," Mr. Garcia said, extending his hand. "Thank you for coming back. I've been looking forward to this day." Max shook his hand firmly, noting the sincerity in Mr. Garcia's voice. "It's good to be back. I can see a lot has changed since I was last here." And Garcia nodded, glancing briefly at Anna with a look of pride. "Yes, thanks to some much-needed reflection and a lot of hard work, we've made some significant improvements. Anna has been instrumental in guiding the team through this transition." Anna's eyes flickered with a mix of pride and humility as she looked down for a moment, still not entirely comfortable with so much attention directed her way. "And how's business?" Max asked, glancing around the busy showroom. Garcia smiled. "Better than ever, actually. Word has spread that we've turned things around. Customers appreciate the change in attitude, and we've seen a noticeable increase in sales. People who might have felt unwelcome here before are now coming in and leaving with smiles on their faces." Max nodded. "That's what I like to hear." There was a pause, filled with the unspoken acknowledgement of how much had been accomplished since Max's first visit. The dealership was no longer a place where only the wealthiest or best-dressed customers received respect. It had become a place where every person was treated with dignity, regardless of their appearance or background. Max turned back to Anna. "There's one more thing I'd like to do before I drive away in that convertible." Anna tilted her head slightly, intrigued. "What's that?" Max reached into the pocket of his jacket and pulled out a small business card. He held it out to Anna, who took it cautiously, her eyes scanning the card. It bore the name of a prestigious consulting firm, one that specialized in customer service training and corporate leadership development. "I've been working with Ricardo," Max explained. "We've started an initiative to help businesses improve their customer service standards, just like you've done here. We want to focus on respect, empathy, and understanding. And I can't think of anyone better to help us lead that initiative than you." Anna's eyes widened as she looked up from the card, disbelief washing over her face. "Are you offering me a position?" Max nodded. "Yes, I want you to join our team and help other dealerships and businesses of all kinds transform the way they treat their customers. You've already proven you can do it here, and I think you'd be an incredible asset to our program." Anna blinked, her mind racing. She had never imagined that her efforts would lead to such an opportunity. The dealership had been her home for so long, and she had poured her heart into turning things around here. But now Max was offering her the chance to make an even bigger impact, to help other organizations follow the same path to respect and success. "I don't know what to say," Anna murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. Max smiled warmly. "You don't have to decide right away. Take your time, but I know you'd be perfect for the job." Anna clutched the business card, her heart pounding with excitement and a touch of nervousness. This was an opportunity of a lifetime, a chance to take everything she had learned and apply it on a much larger scale. She could help other businesses become places where people were treated with kindness and respect, just as she had always believed they should be. "I'll think about it," she said, her voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions swirling inside her. "But thank you. This means more to me than you know." Max nodded. "You've earned it." As they stood there, the red convertible gleaming behind them, Anna felt a deep sense of fulfillment. Everything she had worked for, everything she had believed in, was coming together in ways she had never imagined. The dealership had transformed, and now, thanks to Max's offer, she had the chance to take that transformation even further. Mr. Garcia, sensing the significance of the moment, gave Anna a nod of encouragement. "You deserve this, Anna. Whatever you decide, know that we're all proud of you." Anna smiled, her eyes misting slightly with emotion. "Thank you, Mr. Garcia. And thank you, Max." With that, Max turned toward the red convertible, the car he had admired so long ago. It was finally his, but more than that, it symbolized something much deeper. It wasn't just a car, it was a testament to perseverance, to standing up against judgment, and to believing that change was possible. As the dealership staff gathered around to see him off, Max slid into the driver's seat of the convertible. The leather interior felt soft beneath him, the steering wheel firm in his hands. He glanced over at Anna one last time, giving her a nod of approval. "You're going to do great things," he said. With a final wave, Max started the engine, the powerful hum of the car filling the showroom. Slowly, he pulled out of the dealership, driving away into the afternoon sun. The red convertible gleamed brightly as it disappeared down the road, leaving behind a dealership that had changed not just in appearance, but in heart. Anna stood at the entrance, watching as the car faded into the distance. She held the business card in her hand, her mind racing with the possibilities of what lay ahead. She had come so far from her days as the quiet receptionist, and now, with Max's offer, she stood on the threshold of something even greater. The future was hers to shape, and for the first time, she truly believed that she could make a difference, one that extended far beyond the walls of the dealership. As the doors of the dealership slowly closed behind her, Anna knew that this was only the beginning of her journey. The lessons she had learned here, the values she had fought for, would carry her forward into whatever came next. As the doors of the dealership slowly closed behind her, Anna knew that this was only the beginning of her journey. The lessons she had learned here, the values she had fought for, would carry her forward into whatever came next. Months had passed since Max Johnson had driven away in his red convertible. And in that time, Anna had found herself on an extraordinary journey, one she could never have imagined when she first started at the dealership. After much reflection and discussion with her family and Mr. Garcia, Anna had accepted Max's offer to join him and Ricardo in their customer service initiative. It was a bold decision, one that took her beyond the comfort zone of the dealership she had known for so many years. But it was also a decision that ignited a new passion within her. The initiative, spearheaded by Max and Ricardo, was not just about improving customer service at individual dealerships. Their vision was much larger. They wanted to revolutionize the way businesses of all kinds treated people. From retail stores to luxury brands, from small businesses to large corporations. They believed that every interaction between a company and its customers should be grounded in respect, empathy, and understanding. Anna had become a key part of that vision. Her role in the initiative was to lead training programs designed to teach staff not only the practical skills of customer service, but also the deeper, more intangible qualities that often went overlooked. Things like compassion, emotional intelligence, and the ability to see every customer as a person, not just a transaction. It was a role that allowed her to blend her natural empathy with the leadership skills she had developed during her time at the dealership, and it quickly became clear that she was uniquely suited for the job. Her first major project was working with a nationwide chain of car dealerships that had been facing declining sales and increasing customer complaints. The owners of the chain, having heard about the transformation at Max's dealership, reached out to the initiative in hopes that Anna and her team could help them turn things around. It was a massive undertaking, with over 20 dealerships spread across the country, each with its own unique challenges. Anna's approach was simple but profound. She started by listening. Before implementing any changes, she spent weeks visiting the dealerships, talking to staff members, managers, and even customers. She wanted to understand the culture at each location, the reasons behind the poor customer service, and the attitudes that had led to the current situation. What she found was a mixture of frustration and apathy. Many employees felt disconnected from their work, unappreciated by their managers, and under pressure to meet sales quotas rather than build relationships with customers. It was a toxic environment that had led to the very problems the chain was trying to fix. Anna knew that the solution wasn't going to be a quick fix. This wasn't just about training staff on how to smile more or be polite. It was about changing the culture from the ground up. She worked closely with Ricardo to develop a comprehensive program that focused on three key areas: respect, communication, and emotional intelligence. The program emphasized the importance of treating every customer interaction as an opportunity to build trust and loyalty rather than just pushing a sale. It also included workshops on active listening, conflict resolution, and how to manage the emotional aspects of customer service, which were often the most challenging parts of the job. The training sessions were intense and transformative. At first, there was resistance from some of the staff. Many were skeptical that anything could really change. They had grown cynical after years of feeling like their efforts didn't matter, and some were simply going through the motions. But as Anna led the sessions, using examples from her own experience and sharing stories of how empathy and respect had transformed her dealership, the walls began to come down. Slowly but surely, the employees began to see the value in what she was teaching. They realized that improving their customer service wasn't just about doing a better job. It was about making their own work more fulfilling and meaningful. Anna's ability to connect with people on a personal level became one of the most powerful tools in the training program. She didn't present herself as an outsider coming in to fix things. Instead, she positioned herself as someone who had been in their shoes, someone who understood the frustrations of dealing with difficult customers, the pressure to hit sales targets, and the challenges of working in an environment that didn't always value kindness and respect. Her authenticity resonated with the staff, and by the end of the training sessions, the mood had shifted dramatically. People were energized, excited about the prospect of creating a better work environment, and eager to implement the changes Anna had introduced. The results were almost immediate. Customer complaints dropped, sales increased, and the overall atmosphere at the dealerships improved significantly. Employees reported feeling more connected to their work and more valued by their managers, and customers noticed the difference in the way they were treated. Word began to spread, and soon other businesses started reaching out to the initiative, wanting to replicate the success that Anna had helped create. As Anna's reputation grew, so did her responsibilities. She began traveling more, visiting different industries and leading similar transformation efforts. She worked with retail chains, hospitality groups, and even corporate offices, each with its own set of challenges, but all sharing the same underlying issue: a lack of respect and empathy in their customer service practices. In every case, Anna used the same approach: listening, understanding, and then teaching people how to connect with their customers on a human level. Her programs weren't just about boosting profits. They were about creating workplaces where people felt valued, both employees and customers alike. One of the highlights of her journey came when she was invited to speak at a prestigious business conference in New York City. The conference was attended by CEOs and executives from some of the biggest companies in the world, and Anna was asked to present her findings on the impact of empathy and respect in business. It was a surreal moment for her, standing on stage in front of such a high-profile audience, sharing her story and the lessons she had learned along the way. As she spoke, she felt a deep sense of pride and fulfillment. She had come so far from her days as a receptionist, quietly observing the mistreatment of customers and wondering how things could be different. Now she was at the forefront of a movement that was changing the way businesses operated, and she knew that she had found her true calling. Her presentation was met with overwhelming applause, and afterward, several companies approached her, eager to learn more about her methods and how they could implement similar programs in their own organizations. It was a whirlwind of meetings, consultations, and new opportunities, each one more exciting than the last. But despite her growing success and the increasing demands on her time, Anna never lost sight of the values that had guided her from the beginning. She remained grounded in the belief that respect and empathy were not just business strategies, but essential qualities for creating meaningful connections between people. She continued to approach every project with the same care and dedication, knowing that real change took time, effort, and a deep commitment to understanding the needs of others. As the initiative expanded, Max and Ricardo became even more involved in the strategic direction of the program. They worked closely with Anna, providing her with the resources and support she needed to scale the initiative while maintaining its core values. Max, in particular, remained a guiding presence, always reminding Anna of the importance of staying true to the principles they had built the initiative around. One day, after returning from a particularly successful project with a major hotel chain, Anna received a call from Ricardo. He sounded excited, his voice brimming with enthusiasm. "Anna, we've been invited to present at an international conference in Paris," he said. "They've heard about the work we're doing and want us to share our methods with businesses from around the world." Anna's heart skipped a beat. Paris. The opportunity to present at an international conference was beyond anything she had ever imagined. "That's incredible," she said, her voice filled with awe. "I can't believe it." "You better believe it," Ricardo replied with a chuckle. "This is just the beginning. We're making waves, Anna. People are paying attention." As she hung up the phone, Anna couldn't help but reflect on how far she had come. The journey from her quiet days at the dealership to this moment felt like a dream. And yet, it was real. Every step of the way had been part of her growth, and now she was poised to take the initiative to a global stage. The conference in Paris was a turning point for Anna and the initiative. The room was filled with business leaders from all over the world, eager to learn about the power of empathy and customer service. Anna's presentation was a resounding success, drawing praise and admiration from industry leaders. She spoke not just about the practical aspects of the program, but about the deeper philosophy behind it, the belief that businesses could thrive by treating people with kindness and respect. By the time the conference ended, Anna had been invited to collaborate with several international companies, and the initiative was on its way to becoming a global movement. It was a whirlwind of activity, but through it all, Anna remained focused on the heart of her work, helping people connect, understand, and respect one another. As she stood on a balcony overlooking the Paris skyline after the conference, taking in the beauty of the city at night, Anna felt a profound sense of gratitude. This journey had been unexpected, but it had led her to a place where she could make a real difference in the world. She knew there were still challenges ahead, but she was ready for them. With Max and Ricardo by her side, and with the knowledge that she was helping to change the way businesses treated their customers, she felt more fulfilled than ever before. And as the lights of Paris twinkled in the distance, Anna knew that her work was just beginning. Months after the international conference in Paris, Anna's name had become synonymous with a revolution in customer service. Businesses across multiple industries had begun adopting the methods she and her team had pioneered, and the results were transformative. Her work had evolved far beyond the initial scope, and now, as the initiative expanded its reach, Anna found herself in demand not just across the country, but around the world. It wasn't long before she was receiving invitations from organizations in places as far-reaching as Tokyo, Sydney, and Dubai, each eager to learn how her empathetic approach could help their businesses thrive. Despite her growing fame, Anna remained grounded. She took pride in the work she had done, but it was the lives she was impacting, the people she was helping, that continued to drive her forward. With every new project, she saw the same patterns emerge. Employees who felt disconnected, customers who felt undervalued, and businesses struggling to balance profitability with compassion. But through the techniques she had developed, she was able to help companies bridge those gaps, creating environments where everyone, employees, managers, and customers, felt seen and respected. One of Anna's most rewarding projects came when she was invited to work with a prestigious airline that had been struggling with plummeting customer satisfaction scores. The airline, once known for its luxury and top-tier service, had lost its reputation over the years as customer complaints mounted. Flight attendants, overworked and underappreciated, had become increasingly disengaged, and passengers felt like nothing more than numbers in a system that no longer cared about their experience. When Anna and her team were brought in, she knew that the challenge was going to be significant. The airline was a large, complex organization with layers of management and operations spread across different countries. But Anna had learned that no matter the size of the business, the principles of empathy and respect were universal. She began by shadowing the flight crews, spending time on both domestic and international flights to understand their daily realities. She talked to flight attendants during long layovers, learning about the pressures they faced, the long hours, and the sense that their work had become mechanical. Many felt like they were simply going through the motions, unable to provide the kind of personal touch that had once made their jobs fulfilling. But Anna didn't stop at the flight crews. She also spent time with the airline's ground staff, the customer service representatives, who were often the first point of contact for passengers. These employees faced the brunt of passenger frustration, and their ability to manage stressful situations was critical to maintaining the airline's reputation. Yet they too felt disconnected, overburdened by strict policies and a lack of support from management. After weeks of research, Anna developed a tailored training program for the airline, focusing on rebuilding the emotional connection between staff and passengers. She introduced new communication techniques, teaching flight attendants how to engage with passengers in meaningful ways, even during short interactions. She also worked with management to implement policies that empowered staff to solve problems creatively rather than relying on rigid rules that often frustrated passengers. The results were astounding. Within months of implementing the new program, the airline saw a dramatic improvement in customer satisfaction scores. Passengers began leaving positive reviews, praising the warmth and attentiveness of the flight crews. Flight attendants reported feeling re-energized and connected to their work in ways they hadn't experienced in years. The ground staff, too, saw a change in how they interacted with passengers, using the skills Anna had taught them to diffuse tense situations and create more positive outcomes. The success of this project led to widespread recognition for Anna and her team. The airline publicly credited her with helping to restore their reputation, and they invited her to continue working with them as a long-term consultant. But Anna, true to her nature, declined the offer for permanent work. She had come to realize that her passion lay in guiding businesses through transformation, not staying in one place for too long. She wanted to keep helping others achieve the same kind of success she had witnessed here. Back at home, Max and Ricardo had also continued to play a vital role in the initiative's growth. Max, always the steady behind-the-scenes force, helped secure new partnerships and expand the reach of the initiative, while Ricardo, with his business acumen, worked closely with Anna to ensure that each new project remained true to their values. Together, the three of them had built something extraordinary, and they were only just beginning to realize the full impact of their work. Despite her busy travel schedule, Anna never lost touch with the dealership where it all began. She often checked in with Mr. Garcia, who was more than happy to keep her updated on the progress the dealership continued to make. Under Anna's influence, the dealership had maintained its culture of respect and professionalism. Customers were now greeted with smiles and a genuine interest in their needs, no matter how modest or grand their intentions for purchasing a car might be. Sales had remained steady, and word of the dealership's transformation had brought in a new diverse clientele. Mr. Garcia had even expanded, opening a second location that followed the same principles Anna had instilled. One day after returning from a consulting trip, Anna decided to visit the dealership in person. It was a quiet morning when she stepped through the familiar glass doors, immediately greeted by a wave of nostalgia. The smell of leather and new cars filled the air, and for a moment, she was transported back to those early days when she was just a receptionist watching everything unfold around her. As she walked through the showroom, several of the employees, new faces she didn't recognize, greeted her warmly. But then she saw someone she did recognize, Mr. Garcia, standing by the desk, engaged in conversation with a customer. His eyes lit up when he saw her, and he excused himself to greet her with a wide smile. "Anna, what a wonderful surprise," he said, extending his hand. "You look like you've been conquering the world." Anna laughed, shaking his hand. "Not quite, just helping a few more businesses find their way." They walked together through the showroom, reminiscing about how far things had come. Mr. Garcia filled her in on all the changes that had taken place since she'd last visited. The promotions, the new staff, the community initiatives the dealership had become involved in. It was clear that the transformation had become a permanent part of the dealership's culture, woven into the fabric of everything they did. "I owe so much of this to you," Mr. Garcia said as they stood near the entrance, looking out over the bustling dealership. "Your vision, your commitment, it changed everything here. We're a completely different business now, and I think we've become better people because of it." Anna smiled, feeling a deep sense of pride. "You were always open to change, Mr. Garcia. That's why it worked. You allowed people to grow and learn. That's the most important thing." As they continued to talk, Anna noticed that one of the employees, a young woman who had just started, was watching them from a distance. The woman, who reminded Anna of her younger self, was clearly curious about the conversation, but too shy to approach. "Who's that?" Anna asked, nodding toward the woman. Mr. Garcia smiled. "That's Chloe. She's new here, but she's got great potential. She's eager to learn just like you were." Anna nodded, her mind already turning over ideas. She excused herself from Mr. Garcia and walked over to Chloe, introducing herself. "Hi, I'm Anna," she said warmly. "Mr. Garcia tells me you're new here." Chloe blushed, clearly flustered but grateful for the attention. "Yes, I just started a few weeks ago." Anna smiled. "I used to work here too, and if there's one piece of advice I can give you, it's this. Never underestimate the power of kindness. Treat every customer like they matter, no matter who they are. It'll take you further than you think." Chloe nodded, her eyes wide with admiration. "Thank you, I'll remember that." Anna spent a little more time at the dealership, speaking with some of the other staff and catching up on how things had evolved. As she left, she felt a sense of peace. This place would always be special to her, a reminder of where her journey had begun. In the years that followed, Anna's influence continued to spread. The initiative grew into a global movement, with thousands of businesses implementing the principles she had championed. Companies that had once been cold and disconnected became places where employees felt valued and customers felt respected. Anna's methods became a gold standard in customer service training, and she was invited to speak at conferences, universities, and businesses all over the world. But through it all, she remained humble. She never sought the spotlight for herself, always attributing the success of the initiative to the people who had embraced the changes and worked hard to make them real. Max, Ricardo, and Anna became a well-known trio in the business world, often referred to as pioneers of the empathy in business movement. As for Max, he continued to manage his manufacturing business, but he also dedicated much of his time to mentoring young entrepreneurs who wanted to follow in his footsteps. His quiet wisdom and thoughtful approach made him a respected figure in the community, and he was often asked to give talks about leadership and the importance of values in business. Anna, Max, and Ricardo's legacy grew with each passing year, but it was never about the accolades or the recognition. It was about the lasting impact they had on the people they touched, the employees who found meaning in their work, the customers who felt heard and respected, and the businesses that learned that success wasn't just about profit, but about connection. In the end, Anna's story became one of enduring change, a testament to what could happen when someone stood up for what was right, when kindness and respect were made central to business, and when people were given the chance to grow. It was a legacy that would continue to inspire for generations to come.